And hello! Welcome back to Toilet Paper Fortune Cookie, a podcast.
Woo!
Unexpected, no, not unexpected wisdom. Unexpected wisdom for an unrelenting reality.
Dave started drinking early today, people.
Hey, I'm on PTO, so I'm kind of mixing it up. So, yeah, unorthodox wisdom for unexpected reality.
Sounds like every day.
Right. Right now, it is kind of every day. Matt, will you tell them what that means?
Sure, Dave. As soon as I know what the hell it means. Back to you, Ron. Well, yes, that's what we're trying to figure out every week on this podcast, where we talk to fun people who have interesting ideas about how we move forward in our business ventures, given the states of things as it is now. And as we know, every day things are changing drastically, up and down, back and forth, trying to figure out what the hell we're doing. But we're still moving forward. And as entrepreneurs of any stripe, we got to be looking towards the future. And as we've talked about from the beginning, we can't go straight at it right now because we got little detours. So we're pivoting. We've got to pivot
Constantly.
We're going to talk to our guest today about pivoting, because she seems to have pivoted her way into a fascinating career on so many different levels. And we hope that you all like it. We hope you enjoy our experiences and you learn something from it. And we highly encourage you during the week to go to any of our sites, especially our Facebook page, where we now have like 650 followers.
Yeah.
And post some questions, some ideas about what you want to hear us talk about. And we're happy to do it. We love the interaction. And speaking of those platforms.
Yeah. Yes. So we are growing. Our YouTube channel is growing. Our audio podcast, surprisingly, is doing very well. So clearly you don't like to look at us. You just like to hear us, which is fine. That's great. So we're growing our platforms, and we ask that if you will do us a fave, go out, subscribe, and then share the subscription. And there's something in it for you. We should mention this is our 11th episode.
Yeah, it is.
We blew right through our 10th episode and didn't even say anything about it. So now we're going to make a big deal about our 11th episode. And in our 10th episode, we started something with our sponsor, Knowledge Perk Coffee, and you should check it out. So that will be in this commercial. We'll have a commercial a little bit. So go out, subscribe, and then do something else that might get you something. I don't want to blow the commercial. So
good tease, Dave. Good tease.
Yeah, I'm teasing. Can you hear it? And we definitely want to thank Side Hustle for the use of their song, Common Ground, which I think we all need a little common ground right now. It's crazy out there right now. It's been crazy, and then it sort of settled down, and now we're just sort of I feel like we're just at a crazy that just keeps up here, right? I mean, it's like normal, and then it just got nuts, and it's just stayed nuts.
Yeah, I do feel like the width and breadth of nuttiness is lessening, and it seems like most people are kind of getting on the same page and just being like, okay, everyone, just do your thing.
I don't know. I think the nuttiness has gone from the stratosphere of the media and the people and up there that we watch, and it's filtered into our daily life. I tell you a quick story, and then I'm going to turn it over to you, because we do have an awesome guest, and we want to give her enough time in our episode. I was in a vacation spot just recently, happened yesterday, and I was pulling into a parking lot for a little kind of lake beachy area where you could canoe and all that kind of stuff. Very unfamiliar, never been there before, trying to follow the signs. And I'm pulling into a parking spot, and I'm waiting for this woman to move, right? I know that she's backing out. She's got her she's backing out. I see her rear lights on, right? And And I'm just sitting there waiting for her to move. And then I've got a car behind me. And I thought, okay, well, maybe this woman really isn't going to move. So I sort of moved over a little bit so that the woman behind me could get past me to go park in another parking spot. And then this woman the woman that got her reverse lights on, starts yelling at me like, move. I'm like, what do you want me to do? And she told me I was number one from the time that she pulled out all the way past, and she's right here, just vomiting on me, screaming at me, telling me how much of an a-hole I was because I didn't move. I'm like, I don't know what you want me to do. She's like, back up. I'm like, so no, I think everybody's just going nuts. People in general. They're just all going nuts.
The amazing thing that we've watched from this town in particular is sort of the full circle of it. I mean, it really is, and it's not impugning anything. It's just how the facts and things have changed from square one, where we were in the middle of that craziness from square one. When, on March 13th, our governor said, "Yeah, everything's shutting down," and we were like, "What?"
Yeah.
I don't understand.
Yeah.
And so we got to the crazy point by mid-April. Like New York was crazy. And then, of course, when the BLM protests happened and there were some of the unsavory people doing some unsavory things, not necessarily with the protests, but the city got, turned on its ear again. But now we're talking we're 6 weeks removed from most of that. So the craziness in New York, and because the line and the curve and everything has flattened completely here, and they're opening kind of in a very measured way, the craziness is not, it's dissipating here. It doesn't mean everything's open, but I think that's one of the reasons why it's not all that crazy, because you don't have people being like, open up our gym, they all know that you can't open up the gym right now, so it's getting less crazy here as it has become more normal. And I think that a lot of the places that weren't affected early on and now are becoming very affected are kind of going what we went through.
I think so.
Beginning.
The patience is gone. The simple things like pulling out of a parking spot, the patience is just gone.
That's exactly right. And that,
anyway. So, yeah. So,
and the other thing it's funny is that we, in New York, we sort of are very accustomed to impatience. You know what I mean? It's that kind of time. You know what I mean? It's like, there's an edge about this place anyway that,
right.
If somebody calls you an asshole, you probably did something to deserve it in New York. You know what I mean? It's like, we've always thought that, it's like people don't dish out insults for no reason.
Yeah.
They get in your face. It's probably because you did something. So, so it's always kind of that way here. So I don't think that part ever got crazy. We're still yelling at people who wear masks or don't wear masks. And that's, a whole other thing. But I think that we went through that peak. But the only good thing about when we went through that peak was everybody had to stay home. There was no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Right.
When that was all happening, they were like, no, stay home. And we did. So I definitely empathize with what's happening in the rest of the country as far as watching kind of that like snapping happening.
Yeah. So, well, I think it's happening. I feel it's happening. The patience that people have right now, at least in our area, in the South, where I'm at.
Yeah.
And I was in a different state, not a different state of mind, but literally a different state than South Carolina. I won't rag on them, but it was, I don't know. It's just the patience is gone. You walk into a place and it's like, what do you want? It's like,
I know.
I just want to buy some gas. It's like, I don't know. It's weird.
And we never really had that because we were just waiting in line to go into a grocery store. Like we knew it from the beginning. And it's like, okay, so these are the rules. So we have to follow the rules. Let's follow the rules. It doesn't mean everybody wasn't on edge. We were really on edge. Sure. We were also in a place where there were a whole shit tons of people who were dying. So it was kind of like, okay, everybody stay inside.
Yeah.
So, it was combined with, we didn't know what was going to happen. But at the same time, we were just like, okay, I'm just going to blindly follow the rules because I don't know what's happening. And we didn't have as much opinion about it at the time. It's just like, I'm just going to stay home. Okay, great.
Right.
But also the weather wasn't all that nice. It was still in April and some of it was kind of crappy. And, it was like, so we're taking it day by day and hopefully people are taking care of themselves and we're here to change the subject.
Right. Yes. Yes. So changing the subject, you've got some shout outs. So
I do. This is my version of Stokey Stories this week is, paying a few moments to two very, very important men that I know who are also happen to be two of my dearest friends who both have birthdays this week. And on July 1st, I celebrated via social media the 48th birthday of my dear friend, retired Lieutenant Colonel Daniel R. Zappa, U.S. Marine Corps.
Wow.
He retired from the Marine Corps last summer after 23 years of service. I've known Danny since kindergarten in Pittsburgh.
Nice.
We were best friends growing up. We played all kinds of sports together. When we were juniors in high school, Danny was the catcher who caught my last no-hitter. And it was very, very exciting. I threw 5 no-hitters, dude.
What?
Yeah, I threw 3 in high school. Yeah. But I have to get out the baseball. That is from
I have a whole new respect for you. I had no idea.
Oh yeah, I played Division I college baseball, Dave. I probably should have told you that.
You probably should have.
So we grew up together. He went off to Bucknell. He played football at Bucknell. I went to Mount St. Mary's to play baseball, and then through a strange series of events, became an actor. One really solid career follows another one. Really great. Following up acting. But Danny, after he graduated, he went to work for PNC Corporation, was bored out of his skull, and a couple years after, met a Marine recruiter, and who was a friend of his father's. And Danny went into OCS. He said, I want to do this. So he already had a degree from a really good school, so he went right into officer candidate school, came out as a second lieutenant, and over 23 years, he did 4 active deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan. Wow. He came back from his final deployment in 2015 to find out that he had glioblastoma.
Ugh.
Yes. How about that? Had nothing to do with anything. Nothing to do. He avoided being killed overseas. Also, in the meantime, he married one of my dear friends. I introduced them. They have 3 children. 2 of his children were born when he was deployed. He got the word on his last deployment that he'd be able to come home and he'd be done. And about a month after he came home, he and his son went to a baseball game, and he started having blurry vision out of his periphery. He went in, and they found 2 giant masses on his brain that were glioblastoma. The survival rate of glioblastoma is less than 5%. 5 years later, Danny Zappa is cancer-free.
Whoa.
He beat it.
That's awesome.
He beat it. And he's doing unbelievably well. He's still working. He hasn't stopped. He just retired from active duty, but he's doing a lot of really cool stuff with the government that he's not allowed to tell me about.
Yeah. He sounds like a cool dude.
He's the best. And he's a real life superhero. He's a hero of mine. Amy, his wife, and his 3 kids are just the best. Amy was a casting director in New York. She was one of the casting directors on The Full Monty. And my friends from Pittsburgh used to come up to visit, and she was like, why don't you ever introduce me to any of your friends from like back home? I was like, wait a second. And I introduced her and Danny, and 6 months later they were engaged, and a year later they were married.
Oh my gosh. Wait, you played Division I baseball. Yeah. You threw 5 no-hitters, and you have an impeccable taste at hooking people up. That was one.
That was one.
One and done? Oh, come on. There's got to be more.
There might have been a couple others, but
I guarantee you there's more.
That was my big success story. So Danny's birthday was July 1st. All the best to him and his family. He is literally one of my true heroes in life and a real life superhero. Thank you for your service, Lieutenant Colonel Zappa.
Awesome.
My other shout out is to someone that you know and love just like I do.
Yep.
July 3rd. We'll be celebrating his 47th birthday, 7/3/73. Big shout out to David's first cousin and my best friend since college, Patrick Wilson. Patrick is one of those people who, over the years, he and I originally became best friends on the first week of school when he came to a little party we were having at our house. He heard some heavy metal music being played in the house, and somebody told him it was me who was playing it. We didn't even know we were in the same class. He came bounding out the back door of my house to where we were all sitting outside drinking beers.
Bounding.
You can picture Patrick bounding.
I can see it.
And he's like, are you Stokey? Yes. He said, are you playing Motley Crue? Yes. Oh my God, awesome. He said, I think we're in the same class. First time I met Patrick. He was wearing overalls that were cut off his jeans, as you do.
Of course.
A blue and red striped horizontal striped shirt and a bandana and Chuck Taylor high tops. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You knew that guy very well.
Yeah.
Over the years, Patrick and I have remained best friends. I was very honored to be best man at his wedding. 15 years ago, they just celebrated their 15th anniversary. He and his wife, Dagmara, have 2 incredible kids who are now, I don't know, fully grown up, Callan and Cassian. And Patrick is one of those people that I've watched him navigate through an amazing career. He and I got to work together on Broadway. We've done movies together. He has wrangled all of that into also becoming one of the best gentlemen I've ever known, and one of the best fathers, one of the best friends, an incredible husband. And the more famous he has gotten, the less it could freaking matter.
The more humble. I think he's
absolutely 100% more humble that Patrick has gotten, the more his star has risen. And he cares about 2 things, his family and his friends. And that extends all the way through his family in particular, the Stringers and the Burtons, obviously, and on to those of us who have been his best friends over the years. He's an extraordinary guy. He's a role model for other men. He's as good a person as I know, and he also personally saved me a few times in my life, including a year and a half ago when he came to Pittsburgh and picked me up after my mom passed away, and he wouldn't take no for an answer. He told me the night that she passed, he's like, "Okay, I'm coming to get you," and I was like, "Dude, you have a family. He's like,
no,
I'm coming. Just let me know what day you need it."
Right.
And Dag got on the phone, and she was like, "He's coming to Pittsburgh, so don't be a jackass. Like, he's gonna come no matter what. Just tell him where to go."
Yeah.
And he came to Pittsburgh, and he helped me get all the stuff that I needed to get, and we drove back. He drove me back to New York, and we had a great time. And it was one of those days that somebody literally flew in and saved me. And for that, I say thank you to Patrick. Happy birthday, my friend. Happy birthday to Danny Zappa. I'm the very humble recipient of your guys' amazing friendship. So thank you very much, and happy birthday.
Happy birthday to them both. Yep. Awesome. Very good. So we are going to move to commercial because we are bringing, please say her full name because I will.
Valeria Lau-Kee Lai is joining us. And when you hear all the stuff she does, she's also just magical, and she's incredible.
This Valerie is like a warm light of sunshine.
So true.
That I hope it comes through the interview because she's super cool. And I look forward to meeting her in person, but I really, really enjoyed this interview with her. So
we hope you guys do too. Watch our commercial.
That's right. Here comes the commercial right about now. Hi, don't be afraid. It's just me, David Stringer behind the scenes.
Mad scientist?
No, just bedhead, before all of the magic happens. And like all entrepreneurs who are relentless, we need our energy, and mine is Knowledge Perk Coffee. I love their burn rate because it helps me power through my morning until second breakfast.
What, you don't eat 2 breakfasts?
Knowledge Perk can ship anywhere in the world, and you can subscribe and have it delivered as often as you like. And not only will you be getting the best coffee you've ever tasted, you'll also be supporting a company that supports the community. We at Toilet Paper Fortune Cookie are proud to have Knowledge Perk as our sponsor, and so we have a special offer for you. If you subscribe to our YouTube page or our audio podcast, we'll send you a special #TPFC discount code. To get our code, post a screenshot of your subscription in our Toilet Paper Fortune Cookie Facebook group, and we will DM you the code. Thanks for watching, and now back to the show.
And thank you to our sponsor, Knowledge Perk. Get yourself some good coffee, why don't you?
Who's that guy in the video?
That guy in the video was outstanding. That guy is quite the actor. Did you notice? The man has spunk. He's got style. And he shows for some really seriously good coffee. So go get yourself some. We now enter the really fun portion of the show, and with a very, very special guest star who is near and dear to my heart. Please welcome to Toilet Paper Fortune Cookie, Valerie Lau-Kee Lai.
Yay! Hello.
Welcome, Valerie.
Yes, welcome from Vermont.
Yes.
Look at all the trees. It's so green.
The Green Mountains. My grandfather used to say the Green Mountains. There are no other mountains like the Green Mountains.
They're splendid. And this morning I watched, the weather patterns move through. And I've actually taken to doing, there's a lot of clouds, doing a time lapse on my phone.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah.
One of my favorite, I just drove out into Pennsylvania a couple of weekends ago, and like in the middle of farmland, PA, right on Route 80. And it's one of those spots in the country that reminds me of driving through Ireland, where you can see the cloud formations on the hills, when you can see the shadows of the clouds moving across the hills. And I think that is the coolest thing ever. And it was such a great reminder that, yes, we as human beings, the denizens of this place, can tend to F things up, but the world is absolutely freaking beautiful. And it's actually maybe more beautiful after these 4 months than it has been in centuries, because we're not screwing everything up. But it's just stunning. And it doesn't give a damn what we do. It just keeps right on going. Just how beautiful it is. So congratulations for being away from all the madness and in the middle of peacefulness.
It is really unusual to be an expat New Yorker harbored in my sanctuary in the Green Mountains. Yes.
Yes, we're all looking. People in New York right now that things have pretty much flattened out, everyone's looking and they're hitting up all their friends. Like, who has a place? Who has a place? I'll clean the house. I'll mow the lawn. Whatever you want me to do. Like, I'm coming just to get out. And it's so funny because it's not the way it was at the beginning, which was like escaping the virus. Now it's kind of like the virus has flattened and has gone away in the city for the most part. But it's because people in New York in the summer get out of New York. They leave. And it's also been way more hot in June than it normally is right now. You're not missing that, Val.
It has been warm up here. It has. And normally what I do up here is I come up here to ski. So this house has no air conditioning. So I am quite subject to, if it gets warm, I notice.
Yeah. I mean, we've had 90s in June. That usually doesn't happen here in the city. We've had some 90s like consistently. So we're all looking to get out a little bit. Valerie, the reason why I was so keen to have you on the show, and you've been a devoted watcher and listener to us since like the beginning, one of the people who from the beginning was very interested in what we were talking about. And I told David a couple of months ago that we needed to have you on as somebody who, in our business, which is that of theater, has seen it from a lot of different angles, and will give us I think an interesting and keen insight onto what is happening. We know that there is lots to be done, and in looking at your background, you have been a member of our union since, let me see, right off the top of my head, 1984.
Yes. Not giving away my age or anything, but yes.
And you made your living largely after performing as a stage manager.
Yes. Or as I tell people, I'm a recovering stage manager.
God bless you. For those people listening that don't know exactly what a stage manager does in theater and specifically on Broadway, they are babysitters to a bunch of big babies called actors. And they have to listen to all of our bitching and moaning about everything. They have to tell us to shut up when we won't shut up. More than anything, they are the only other people in the building who are members of the same union as the actors. Actors Equity Association is the union of stage managers and actors. And we're the ones in that union in the building. And actors who I don't have any time for are the ones who don't realize that your stage managers are not your adversaries. They're the only people in the building who have your back for real. So I've always had a kinship. I've also had a bunch of very good friends who are stage managers, including Val, who I've known for a long, long time. Tell us about your experience of being on that side of the business for all these years.
Well, it's One of those things where I enjoyed it most of all because there's always something new to learn, because there's so many people making the theater happen, and learning what it is that they do is so fascinating. There is just so much to be gleaned from the nuances that everybody brings to how they do their job. And there's no one way to skin a cat. So it becomes fantastic to be able to compare and contrast, or I guess compare and contrast the way people approach their work and the subtleties that make the difference between it, and also how some of those combinations work better. Like sometimes you might say, oh, that's not how I'm going to do it. But then you find yourself in a situation where that's exactly how you're going to do it.
And you have to understand that stage managers are, from the beginning of production right through opening night, are the ones who have to keep everything organized. And if I that's understating it by 100 miles. With all the changes that happen during rehearsals, during out-of-town tryouts, during pre-Broadway, during tech rehearsal, right up through preview performances, through opening nights, the stage managers, there will be a production stage manager who's in charge, and then 2 assistant stage managers. And then for production, for pre-productions, there's usually maybe a 3rd ASM or some production assistants who we don't have to pay. They keep everything, every single thing organized. They have to monitor all the tech issues. They have to monitor all of the staging issues. I couldn't do it for one day. I could not do it for one day. And the people that I've worked with who have been the best stage managers, I have so much respect for, and I think they must be a little bit insane, because I just would not have that patience. I would be telling actors, sit down and shut the F up all the time, in which case I would get fired. So
yeah, you would last a day. That's all. You'd like, get that guy out of here. Right? He's terrible.
And you know what's interesting is that's also the perspective of the actor. But sometimes if you look at some stage managers, they look at themselves, and I'm going to take the model out of the theater for a moment. Sometimes I explain to people who are not in the industry that I'm a lot like a general contractor. So what I've got going on is I'm organizing a bunch of trades. And when you're building a house, you're going to have the people who come in, they're going to lay the plumbing in, they've got to come in when the studs are in, and then the electricians have to come in and do part 1. And then you've got to figure out where the furniture is going to be before you figure out where the recessed lighting is going before you put in the drywall, and where the outlets are going, like building a building. And you come in after that fact, and then you still have to do the finish work. So that, plumbing is coming out of the wall, but you're deciding, now I'm going to put in a sink here, and don't forget the garbage disposal, and, counters go in before the paint gets done, or paint first, then counters in, actually that's the way it goes. But that's what we do as stage managers. We're watching all the trades, try to figure out what they're doing. And when you think about it, the costume designer has not seen the set. The set designer has not seen a single one of those actors. And the sound designer, he finally sees you when you're in rehearsal figuring out who's singing. But in the meantime, he doesn't know the timbre of your voice.
Right.
So we're all trying to build a building, whether or not we've ever seen each other. When we step foot into the theater, there are about 5 trades who've never laid on each other, but on a piece of paper have worked it out so that there's a curtain going up after we've been in that theater for 4 weeks.
I've said to David, when we talk about you just described the entire role of an entrepreneur, really, when it comes to it. You're like, you've got to put all these, honestly, we talked about this on previous shows, about how you really are the micromanager of everything. And you have to do 2 things. Number 1, know what you want, and also be able to delegate. David and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago on the show, is that fear of delegation, because usually those of us who want to start an enterprise want to do it all. I'm one of those people, which is why my 2 businesses I've formed outside of being an actor, it's pretty much me. It's Matt Stokey Photography, and it's Matt Stokey, corporate training. I answer to me. If I screw up, I screwed up. But David and I have talked about this as an entrepreneur building a business. What you're describing is, that's exactly right. You go into that house and you go, okay, let's take a little bit of this, a little bit of this. But at least you have an idea as a business builder what it all looks like. I think it might have been Stephen Sondheim of all people that said the hardest thing in the world to do in the arts is to write and produce a musical, because it requires all of those trades to have the same vision. Somehow they come to the same vision. Even if they don't know what that looks like, they all have to come together, and all those things have to fit together, including everybody backstage, all of our stagehands who don't know what any of it looks like, and they end up being some of the most important cogs in those wheels to be like, when do you want this to go on stage? You got to tell me when you want it to go on stage. When do you want the curtain to come in? You got to tell me, and it all comes together, and they end up being the people who run the show day to day, but nobody has any idea what it looks like. So when it works, I don't have any idea how it works. I really don't. And I've been doing this for almost 30 years. And when it all comes together, I go, I don't know how that worked.
I can also tell that Valerie is one of those types of people that she has an incredible aura. Because we haven't met in person. I'm only getting it through the internet here. So it's translating over electrons. You put people at ease with your communication style and clearly your aura. And so you have that ability to take a frantic, I can just imagine it, a frantic Matt Stokey who can't find his hat or whatever. And kind of like I was doing right before the show, which is like, I was looking for this file and Matt joked, he's like, just look right in front of you. It was like, oh, it's right there. And you, I bet, have that ability to pull people together that way, which is I don't have that ability. I have different skill sets to pull people together. And I envy that ability to be some kind of a supernatural calm. It just says, okay, let's work through this problem together.
Well, you know what? It's interesting because I feel as though that comes with having seen some things. And when you get to the point where you kind of go, it's going to be okay. And on the scale of 1 to 10, is it really it's not a disaster. So you learn to relax.
You're at an 8. So let's just dial it down. Maybe we can meet in the middle of like a 5 or a 4.
Yeah. I used to turn to the staff at Broadway Cares when I first got there, and they would think that something terrible happened. And I would look at them and just say, did anybody lose a limb? And they said, no, like it was the last thing they could think of. And I said, well, then it's fine. Because really, on the scale of things, we do some outrageous stuff in a theater. And what we want is for everybody to be safe and to work safely and to feel safe. And we rely on everybody to really, really, we have to trust their judgment, because they're every actor who steps foot on that stage is their last line of defense. And they can do it when they feel right, when they feel safe. And you need to create that environment, and you have to trust them when they say no. So there's an enormous amount of trust that gets involved in this process. And you imbue them with that because you rely on them that's delegating. You're safe. If you think you're safe, keep going. That's delegating for you. But it's really important. It's really important.
That is, it's one of those things that over the course of a long career, you realize who are the most valuable people in your life as a performer. And there's no way when you're a young actor in school or just getting out of school that you can understand just how important these people become to your lives. Because every time a show goes up, if you're lucky enough to be in a Broadway show that runs for a while, after opening night, everybody goes away. Everyone goes away. It's no longer important to the people whose names are above the titles. They just check in about every 2 or 3 months to make sure everything's okay. We had our opening night. We got good enough reviews. Okay, we're going to run. Everyone leaves. And who's left in the building but the people who run the show 8 times a week? And then it becomes a job. It becomes a great job, but it becomes a job. And it becomes 8 different times per week where there are different issues, and there are technical things, and there are people who are sick, and there are people who are fighting, and there are romances, and there are
Like Pam.
oh God. Oh.
Sorry, I had to put that in there.
Yeah. Well, we live and learn. But the people who have to keep it together, the person in the building who is in charge is your stage manager, your company manager, your 3 stage managers call the shots. But the stage manager is the person who keeps everything together in the building and is the person who answers for everything that goes wrong in the building. All of it lands on the production stage manager. Now, if you know this as an actor, you choose your battles where you want to add to all of that nonsense. Some actors don't understand this and choose to take, minutia to their stage managers. I say the squeaky wheel doesn't get the grease, the squeaky wheel doesn't get allowed in the door the next time. That unless, again, as you said, Val, unless like, I'm sorry, did somebody lose a limb? Then just figure out a way. Like, just figure it out. Just deal with it. And for the run of a show, the people who have to deal with it every single day, 8 shows a week, are the stage managers. And they are, when you've worked with really good ones, you get incredibly spoiled. And you realize just exactly how valuable they are to you. And it's one of the things, anytime I have a chance to teach kids, I say, you won't know it now because you think that the people that you're going to need to know the best and kind of suck up to are like composers and directors and choreographers. And you want to make a career, respect and be respected by your stage managers. Because I have not only gotten to Broadway shows because the stage managers are people I know and said, oh, hire Matt Stokey. I've also gotten jobs for stage managers because I believe so vehemently that like, oh God, you have to work with this person. Matt DiCarlo is one of those people who was our stage manager on Rock of Ages. And for about 3 years before he started to get all his PSM jobs, I would just tell everybody I saw, Matt DiCarlo. And because he was young, he was 25, 26 years old. And I said, this guy's going to be one of the best ever. And the quickest way to screw your career is to have stage managers talk to each other.
It won't screw your career. It'll just people will look at you very carefully when you walk in the door and make sure you're following all the rules.
I mean, but it's like it is such a microcosm of so much of business, Dave, where it's like
the way you're describing it reminds me of a good HR manager. Actually, we had the pleasure the first time Insignia was massively scaling up a couple of years ago, and we thought we were going to explode and have 100 people. So there was a woman in Rock Hill who I had seen through the network of companies. She was working for a particular company, and I had a chance to interact with her at a couple of the city economic development meetings and stuff. And I said to myself, the first time I met her and saw her communicate publicly, I said, I'm going to hire that woman. I'm absolutely going to figure out a way to get her to work for Insignia because I want her vibe in the company. And so it sounds like her name is Maury Darude. So if she's listening, Maury, we miss you. She's gone on to do great things, and we hated to see her go out of the company as we downsized a couple of years ago. So we expanded and then downsized, and and the point is that the company had such an amazing vibe when you have that type of a person to help your employees and your departments really communicate. And that sounds like, what that stage manager position is a lot. I mean, I love the general contractor because you're kind of managing people. You're managing a project, yes, but really you're managing people and emotions and egos and all of that. So
you're managing actors.
Very cool. Yes, very cool.
We're terrible.
So tell us about Broadway Cares. I mean, good time to to switch into that.
Yeah, it was. Well, also at a certain point in my life as well. So in 2013, my last show happened to be closing. It was Spider-Man: Turn Off the Dark. And look at Matt's face. And the show closed. And I thought, it's a really good time for me to come up here to Vermont and just chill out for about 3 months, because I need to take a breath and step away. And then I can decide to go into the industry and go freelance. And as freelancers, then I have to go hit the pavement, send out my resume, start looking for work. Each show is a business within itself. And so I have to go find another business. It just happens that they just rent theaters and they're inside theaters. So a new one. And it just so happened that someone was vacating a position at Broadway Cares. Now, Broadway Cares is a charity that actually belongs to Broadway. It belongs to all the people who work on Broadway, not only as for their benefit, but because the people of Broadway are what make it run. As volunteers, they make it happen. And that's what...
Tell us what Broadway Cares is, Val.
Oh, okay. So, well, let me pause and just say that I volunteered for Broadway Cares for many years, and therefore they knew, yes, exactly. And that's when they realized, they knew me from that, and they asked me to come on board. So now what Broadway Cares is a 501c3. It is a charity which fundraises in a very grassroots manner. So a large portion of the money that we raise comes from doing audience appeals after shows 12 weeks out of the year. So if you've ever seen one of those red buckets at the end of a show, that's Broadway Cares. And it's really sort of unusual in that way because it is so highly successful in its ability to find its audience and appeal to them and use the volunteer base of the people inside the theaters. So therefore, in past years prior to COVID, we were able to have a percentage rate of 80-18, which means 82 cents out of every dollar went towards what we funded, which are the Actors Fund and also over 450 AIDS and family service organizations across the country. Wow. Now, a lot of people might say, ooh, AIDS. But the thing is, although that's a primary part of our mission statement, it also completely addresses a bandwidth where most of the people who are served by these AIDS service organizations are living at 300% poverty level and below. And when we talk about poverty level, we oftentimes just say it's a word. No, it's a number. It means that somebody is earning $12,000 or less per year. And when you think about that, that is federal poverty level. And nobody's going to change that, no matter how. It has been that since I joined the organization, and I've been there for 6 years, and the cost of living has gone up, which means the gap has even increased more. And nobody's going to change it, because that will simply mean that there are more people who are at poverty level on whoever's administration's roles there are that year. So nobody wants to say, well, in my administration, we increased more people at poverty by 300%. Nobody's going to say that. And then the gap is going to get larger and larger and larger. But operating within that, the government stops really helping people at a certain point, and people end up living in a bandwidth which makes them marginalized and just don't have access to things. So these aid service organizations all have different services and needs and populations that they serve. And taking that into consideration, we sort of filter them out so that we can do grants rounds for them three times a year, but twice a year is most important. What we're talking about is, let's say right in January, we meet and we look over grants that come from almost 125 organizations across the country that are simply about feeding people. We all know God's love we deliver. We fund them as well, but there are some small ones. And oftentimes I say to people, when you think about who's in need, you just presume it's someone else. But for example, when Hurricane Sandy pulled through, and or any hurricane that you can imagine, Maria has pulled through, swaths of people who were just like you and I were left homeless, living in gyms and stadiums or whatever. And we actually had a grantee who said, look, we're ready. We need another refrigeration unit because ours got busted by this hurricane. And we sent them the grant and they got it fixed. And instead of serving just the people who they usually serve, their doors opened wider and they served everybody who would come to them. So I think Joe Kennedy said it the best. Joe Kennedy III said, but by the grace of God, we may all wake up one day in need of a little mercy. And it was that moment where somebody who thought that they would never be in need was standing there at the door going, I just need fresh milk and I do not have a refrigerator. And if I had it 3 days ago, I don't have it now.
Wow. Now, just to make sure I'm clear on how it works. So you take up you take up donations after the shows, after Broadway shows, and then that money is collected, and then Broadway Cares distributes that money, as you were just saying. Give us a scope of what that dollar amount looks like. I mean, is it 50 grand? Is it 500,000? Is it 5 million? Is it 50 million? What's
the last year in March, April, when we did our fundraising at the Easter Bonnet, because we centered around a competition that the shows can all participate in then. We collected, I believe it was $6.25 million.
All right. So this is significant money that you are putting back out into these organizations and grants. And so we're not just talking about $100 here, $200 there. We're talking about thousands of dollars, getting to people like you described that are in need. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Dave, something that has been one of the greatest joys of my life, not overstating. Over the years, I've gotten to know Tom Viola, who we'll talk about in a second. Tom Viola is the man who created Broadway Cares Equity Fights AIDS in response to the AIDS epidemic of 30 years ago, and here we are today. I've gotten to know Tom very well. He's a Pittsburgher. We're hometown boys. He's one of my favorite people I've ever known in my life. He's top 10 best people I've ever known, and it was who just called Val before we started the show. Tom is literally one of the best human beings I will ever know in my entire life, and over the years, we've gotten close. I've helped raise money for Broadway Cares. When we were doing The Boy from Oz, we were the first show to raise over $1 million by ourselves, largely because of Mr. Jackman, but we raised over $1 million in one show.
Wow.
But since 2000, I think 8 or 9 was the first time, Tom has invited me several times to be part of the grants committee. And I'll get chills and I get teary thinking about being in those rooms, because those 3 times a year, he'll put people together on their little committees dealing with food service, dealing with direct services, dealing with all the different areas where Broadway Cares donates money to. And over the course of about 4 hours, you hand out $7 million. And it's the greatest feeling. Maybe I seriously just get chills thinking about it right now, because you see all during the year people putting money in buckets, or doing the Broadway, the flea market, or doing Broadway Bears, or and you see these numbers and all this stuff, and you're like, what are all these numbers? What do they mean? We sit down in a room and we go around and we look through grants, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of grant applications, and then decide who gets money. And inevitably, if people say they asked for 5, can we give them 10? Tom Viola and Ira Mott say, yes, we can give them 10. And
Right.
it's amazing, because you get used to what it's like to look through grant applications, and it's, it can be tedious, but you start to get used to how it works. And
you feed off that energy, you feed off the energy of what you're doing. So that's pretty exciting.
It's the first time I did it. I was on a 3-person panel with Kathleen Chalfant. If you don't know who she is, she's one of the greatest American actresses ever. And I sat next to her, and at one point she just put her hand on my hand and said, "Doesn't it feel good to help people?" and I just lost it. I just completely lost it. And I remember going home that day, and I floated from the Actors Fund building over to my apartment in Hell's Kitchen. And I said, there's no way when I was younger and dreamed of a life on Broadway and all the trappings of a life on Broadway that I would have possibly been able to know that one of my favorite days of my life would not be that first day that I got offered a Broadway show, but the first day that I walked out of that room to no fanfare, to no paparazzi, to no pictures, to no fancy clothes. And I floated home because it was just extraordinary. By the way, we're getting pelted by hail right now.
I see your blinds in the back. They're like going bananas.
This is hail. We're getting giant hailstones.
Sweet. Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, your locust is next week, so it's fine.
Well, let's see. We've had meth gators. We've had murder hornets.
Valerie, so back on topic because this is awesome and I don't want to lose steam. Valerie, specifically, what do you do for Broadway Cares to put you on the spot?
Oh, wow. I am now the producing director. I started off as a producer, and the producing director basically oversees the 4 producers who are working. And I also it allows me to have a really great relationship with Tom. So it allows me to figure out what his needs are and what his concerns are, and make sure that we basically can function by, making the parts run, keeping everybody informed. And it's taught me a lot about being able to communicate well.
And a producer is what?
A producer is somebody who takes an idea about a show. In our case, this is a title we don't give to somebody who has a lot of money, who throws it at things and says, here, make a show happen. It's about the person who actually lines up all the bits and pieces so that the show can happen. Everything from, in our case, it's a little bit different than commercial theater because we ultimately do have to pay for certain things, but we also get permissions. So for example, with Actors Equity, which we belong to, I am able to, rather than write a contract, I'm able to get a waiver. Or if I'm working out an agreement with the AFM, I can then work out something with them directly and say, I'm trying to aim for this. Can I get a contract with you? And
what would those contracts be? You're talking to somebody who just absolutely zero understanding of the industry behind the scenes. So when you say producer and then puts together the pieces, is that a particular fundraising effort in a particular show, or is that? So again, break it down for the major. Curious.
I work for a charity and I'm producing a show, and yes, I'm producing a show. I'm generally producing something on stage that needs to host people in the audience. So we have to stage, and because we don't have the resources to build a whole new stage, our objective is to actually rent an existing stage, and we do it on their stage.
I see.
Actually,
you come in and you do a follow-up show or a specific fundraising show. I see. Okay. All right.
Like if I was to, let's say, rent the company cafeteria for my school lunch.
Mm-hmm.
That's sort of what I'm working out. Your facilities, my people.
I see. Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. All right. And then what kind of shows are these? Are these typically variety shows? Are they typically...
That's exactly it. They're like variety shows. So we have a couple of different ones, but I think variety show covers it super well.
Yeah.
And 2 of them are actually about bringing together the people who have been doing all the fundraising in all those theaters. So for years, it had been sort of a competition between shows about who could raise the most money. And then what we did was we created a moment where we said, come on, let's all celebrate the fact that we put in all this work together. Do a 3-minute skit and dance for us. Or during the Easter time, we do an Easter bonnet, create this beautiful hat and do a 3-minute skit for each other to show us how funny you can be or how well you can dance. And the whole community comes together to celebrate together. And then we reveal the amount of money that everybody raised together.
It's thrilling.
Now, is the money coming from actors or is the money coming from patrons?
Patrons.
Patrons. Okay.
But the actors are a really important part of it, because you know what? The actors do the appeal, and they've set us up for that moment where at the end of the show, you can tell how audiences feel about that show and how they respond, because it shows up in those buckets. Their feeling comes out in that respect and that donation and that feel good moment, and they're sharing in that. So the actors are literally taking how good they make people feel and turning it into something of goodwill. And it's amazing to get a sense that you can turn a feeling into something. And then they do these other incentives, which is, they sign posters. So for them, it's a signature and it's a Sharpie. For someone else, it's them saying, oh, the entire cast signed this.
That's so decent. I got it. Yes.
And we don't have to wait outside the stage door for an hour to get all of these signatures. And I can make a donation and make somebody else, I can feed someone. And so oftentimes we'll say that signature just gave someone 3 weeks of groceries from a food pantry.
Wow. Nice.
So this thing right here, we
describe it to people on our audio podcast. What did you just hold up?
This is a good old-fashioned mouse pad with the logo from a Broadway show I did called The Boy from Oz with Hugh Jackman in 2003. He was making his Broadway debut. He played Peter Allen. It was a life story of Peter Allen, singer-songwriter, Australian. And I was fortunate enough to be in a cast. And it was an event. It was an absolute event for 1 year. It was an event. It was craziness. It was like the Beatles. It was mobs at the stage door, all those things. And we knew it was going to be that way. And he was also extraordinary. He's also one of the kindest, most generous people you'll ever meet in your life.
And you made him a best friend in the first time you met him, which you told us that story in episode, I don't know, 3 or 4. So that's still a brilliant story.
He's an amazing guy, and he loves to see all of us in all the things he does and everything. But one of the things we had to convince him was that we were going to use him and his exceptional skills and charm to raise money for Broadway Cares. And I was the go-between. I had done it for other shows before, was very in touch with Tom, and at the time, Michael Graziano, and we came up with all kinds of schemes to raise money with Jackman. And this dude, for carrying a 2.5-hour musical, along with being a major movie star and having a family, bought in 100%. We started out saying, okay, well, we'll do these Polaroids after the show. And we had somebody from Broadway Cares with a Polaroid, he'd sign them and all this stuff. And we were going to do them for $100. $100. On the first night of fundraising, there were about 200 people waiting in line. We're like, we're going to be here till 3 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
So we raised the price to 500. Then we raised the price to 1,000. And we would still get between 10 and 15 people lining up every night to take a Polaroid and have Hugh Jackman sign their Polaroid.
For $1,000.
For $1,000. We sold signed posters of his for 500, I think, maybe 1,000. There was almost nothing we wouldn't sell for $1,000 or more. We also pulled one of the greatest scams in the history of Broadway Cares. Hugh Jackman in the beginning of Act 2 wore the skin-tight black T-shirt. Now that skin-tight black T-shirt was custom made for Hugh Jackman. But every night after the show, we would bring out just your basic old Calvin Klein T-shirt and say, our auction master, Michael Mulheron, would say, this is the shirt that was worn by Hugh at the beginning of
No, you didn't. Why are you telling us this?
That shirt, along with the towel that he always wore around his neck as Peter Allen, there was one night that we got $32,000 for the combination of T-shirt and towel, a signed poster, and a Polaroid. And they were
but let's get this straight. Not the actual shirt.
Totally lied to people. But the great thing was he would sign it to them and he would give it to them. It didn't matter. It was still a signed T-shirt by Hugh Jackman.
Okay.
And he would put it on stage. He would put it on like during the auction.
Oh, okay, okay. So he actually wore it for a hot minute and then signed it. Not just, let me get this out of the box over here.
No, he would literally take it off his body.
Yes. Okay.
You would have it on, take it off, sign it, and people would go crazy because he was also shirtless. All of this combined was enough where in the fall, when we first opened, we raised $612,000, which at that point was about $300,000 more than any show had ever raised.
Wow.
In the spring, we did it only for 5 weeks because one of those weeks Hugh took vacation and we took the show off. The show didn't exist for 1 week. So we only collected for 5 weeks. We made another $560,000. So in one about 6 or 7 month period, we raised $1.1 million because that guy gave every minute of his time. Anything we asked him to do, he would do. And then he got
dances.
Oh my God. He did that. Yeah.
Was this on film somewhere? It's
actually on closing night. He did a lap dance for Barbara Walters. He and Matt Damon did a lap dance for Barbara Walters on stage on closing night.
Oh.
I took crappy video of it, but he would. I mean, it was because of who he is, and bringing it back around. It's because anybody who's ever done anything for Broadway Cares. If you start to understand the people like Tom Viola, like Val, like Jerry Mitchell, like all the people who have worked with it for years and years and years, there is a calling, if you will, to working with that organization, and how good it feels that we're in a position to give so much back. And Jackman was simply the right person at the right time with the star power. And he used to call me the engine room because I was the person always knocking on his door being like, want to try this? Let's do this. We'd just come up with some random crazy shit and he would just do it. He would just say, yes, let's do that. Let's absolutely do that. And it got to the point
so cool.
We had this thing in the hallway, this grand total in the hallway. And you'd see people coming down the stairs and being like, oh my God, we're so close to 500,000. All right, we need 8 people to collect tonight in buckets. 8 people. Because also one thing that helped us was we were sold out every night. That helps a lot with a show that has sold out seats.
Yeah.
And also he gives this a great speech. And one of the things that I stole from him, at the end of his speech, he'd go, listen, there are 1,400 seats in this theater every night. If each of you gave $1, that'd be $1,400. If each of you gave $1,000, it'd be 1.4 million. So let's see what we can do.
Nice. So, Valerie, how large is the organization Broadway Cares? How many people support this structure that does this?
Right now, on staff, there are 45 people.
Oh, wow. That's a big staff. Okay.
We have a production department. We have that production department supports Broadway Cares and 2 programs of it, which are Dancers Responding to AIDS and Classical Action, which are basically the concert dance and the concert musicians arms of Broadway Cares. They do the same thing for those other 2 realms of existence. And also we have a finance department, they are tiny but fierce. And we have a development department who deals with donors. We have a graphics department, a communications department. And we actually have a little merchandise arm too. So we have some affiliates that we support because there are people who have been part of the industry who recognize that there are things that need to be served. And they are willing to do it. And they have worked really hard to make it possible. And so we support them in these endeavors like the Broadway Green Alliance and Broadway Serves, which actually literally there are a lot of shows out on tour. And those people are traveling about and they want to actually do good deeds. And so they actually will they will connect them with Habitat for Humanity and they will take them to go build homes. Yeah. And then we also have Revolucion Latina to celebrate and to sort of use the talents of the theater industry to sort of empower young Latinas, so they can find that voice and become something that they had not maybe considered before in their lives. So we also support A-STEP, which is Artists Striving to End Poverty, which has international programs, but allows the Broadway industry to go out and serve by bringing their art to communities that might not have ever had that opportunity before.
So COVID hits 10 weeks later, 12 weeks later. What is the effect on Broadway Cares? How have you pivoted in this time?
Well, I can't actually speak to Broadway Cares alone without speaking to the theater industry as a whole. And I think that they are clearly the lifeblood that makes it pump. You know, they're the heart of it, and we just kind of facilitate what they want to support to make happen. We're the structure that allows them to take that desire and that will and turn it into real concrete results. And so we are there with them. And I will point out the other half of the money that we raise goes to the Actors Fund. And so in this moment, particularly in this moment, the money that we raise, that we support the Actors Fund with, is there to support the Broadway industry in their time when they have this emergency and they have needs that aren't met. And so there are grants that go to people who are in the theater industry, should they be unable to handle things themselves for emergency.
Is that all over or just Broadway folks? I mean, could anybody that is in the theater industry anywhere in the United States, could they submit for this, for that support?
There is an eligibility standard that they have to meet.
Right.
Now, it's not so.
I mean, I can't get credit for like building a little stage out back of my house and then saying it was the Stringer Theater and.
Right. Exactly.
No.
Maybe.
I would never do that. I'm just
more time into it. If you did it for 3 years and like you did 3 shows on those stages a year, you actually might find a grant.
We're gonna build a stage. Totally kidding.
But there are different levels of it, and the Actors Fund is not monolithic. It immediately serves all of those people who are members of unions, who've worked for a certain amount of time, or have earned a certain amount of money by doing who have been paid by an entertainment concern over a period of time. So that's not just actors. In the most important sense, I do need to point out that this serves not only actors, but it serves stagehands and wardrobe people and hair and makeup and the theater managers, press agents and managers, and publicity companies and ushers and the porters who clean up the M&M wrappers, after the shows, the stage doormen, and they just have to be paid by a theatrical concern. They have so far given out in the past 4 months as much money as they've ever given out in the past 5 years.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people in need out there.
Well, I'm thinking of just recently, I learned of a small theater in Florida who obviously has been devastated by this. And the owners of that theater are being quite transparent about their despair on social media. And heart goes out to folks who have sunk, their livelihood and everything that they have into the performing arts. And under normal circumstances, I mean, it's a grind. I mean, you're a small, very small theater in a populous area of Florida, but it's still, I mean, you're still struggling to like bring people in and support the arts. And now they've just been decimated. And so stuff like what you're talking about is amazing. And, hopefully folks like that can look for support in these types of organizations. So.
And you said the critical word, which is folks, because it's about the people.
Yeah.
And it's less so about the institutions.
Right.
Let the institutions lie cocooned for the moment, but take care of the people first.
Yeah.
And so in that process, the theater industry is what has kept us going. So we managed to, as many nonprofits have, got a PPP loan. So have used it. And we do have to re-envision what we are doing. And what it means is now, I think of it as like, differential drive. So in the moment where, the production department used to be out there making sure, ferrying buckets to all the different theaters and working until after the show has been happening, making sure that money gets back. Now the development team is working overdrive because they're not in the mud right now and they're going out. And so the diversity of the the organization being as large as it is and having a development department is what's about to keep us alive to see another day. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't consider what we have to do in the future, because this is an important thing to remember, and that is organizations that are not for profit have to file 990s. And what is significant is what is reflected on that 990 is how did you respond to COVID-19? So we are going to have to take that into consideration. I use future tense because.
So explain what you mean by that. I mean, be a little,
okay,
take it a little further.
You spend a certain amount of money and you make a certain amount of money. And clearly, because the theaters aren't open, we're making less money.
Right.
And so we'll have
You're spending a lot of money. Right.
So we have to figure out exactly either, what those expenses are. And we have to, it is our duty to our standing as a not-for-profit to respond to what that differential should be. And it will be shown on the 990 so for anybody who gives money to a charity out there now, there's still a charity navigator, and it is still looking at people's 990s in the next fiscal year, but they look at it in a calendar year.
So again, just to make sure I'm clear on what you're saying that if you do support a charity and you look at their reaction during this time, what you are saying is to expect that they have continued. They didn't just pull back in what they were doing and the money that they're putting back out in the world. They continued to do as much as they can with what they have, but not sort of pulling it all in and suddenly, can't do anything. Sorry. That's right
about that. Yeah. So I think what I'm trying to say is that their operating costs have to contract as well.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Great. Perfect. Great. Now
that made better sense, right?
It wasn't about saying, you knew what you were trying to say. You're talking to, I'm just, trying to translate it for me. So
that's what
business. Yeah.
Valerie and I were talking before we started recording and saying that, it is temporary what we're dealing with right now, but it's going to have long-lasting effect. And because Broadway Cares and other organizations like it are so closely tied in with the health, specifically of Broadway, theater is going to be fine. Broadway is going to be last. Other theaters are going to open, hopefully, if the rest of the country gets their shit together. But other theaters are going to open. Broadway's going to be last. The tourists are going to come back last. Hence, organizations like Broadway Cares are going to get back to where they were last as well. And Val and I were talking a little bit about moving forward, which is kind of the last thing we wanted to ask you about, Val. And I think you, like me, I think one of the reasons why we've always been like-minded and friends is because I do believe that we are half full, if not 3/4 full type people. Don't generally get too worked up about too many things, and also look at it for what it is as opposed to what people are reacting to. And that there's going to be it's become kind of cliche, a new normal. And there's going to be a new normal here in the Broadway theater. I, for one, think that absolutely is 100% necessary. I've been saying it since we started doing the podcast, that this reset on specifically Broadway theater was absolutely needed. The pain that it's causing in the meantime sucks. How it's resetting is the worst. Necessary, I absolutely believe that. What now? What do we do moving forward, Val? Tell us what we're supposed to do.
I have to say, first of all, that we should all keep our eyes open to what this industry is when it resumes, because people are going to want a different thing, and our role in it will be different, and we're going to have to figure out what the needs are and how best we can serve that need. But our eyes have to be open because things are going to change, and it's where we are placed in that restructuring that is important. We're going to be new bricks in the wall. They're going to be round, and it's better to even be mortar than it is going to be to be brick. But the most significant thing that you brought up was this moment where what has not happened but for a few times is that producers have produced shows and they've not used much of the model where there is kind of a residual sharing of the profits of theater. And I believe that there is no walking back into the theater under the old model where everybody earned X amount of money. But the great observation from Matt was, what if X is relative? What if not you're earning, you're not earning the flat amount, but you're doing that, and it makes people who are making theater happen. It makes the actors and the stagehands and the musicians and all the other people who make it happen, it makes them stakeholders. And like any Fortune 500 company that now has put out that statement that says, we serve the stakeholders, not the shareholders, we suddenly become more attuned to the distribution, and we all it becomes more important to all of us that it become a profitable venture. It puts the onus back on all of us to understand we have something at stake in making theater possible to happen. We don't just sit there and complain about the last negotiation. We are making the success of the product a big portion of our biggest priority. It's all of our priority. We share in that priority. And I think that is really important to make everybody a part of it. Oh God, I sound like a communist, don't I?
No, not a bit, because you're not a bit. And I would say if I take it from a business standpoint, if I have a venture where the actors of that venture are not tied into the success, the profitability. So success equals profitability in this particular formula. Then what I have is a lot of people who are just there to fill a seat. They're not there to go somewhere on the bus. And so what you're talking about is changing the analogy to people on the bus who are all going in the same direction, rather than just filling a seat. Where's this bus going? Have no idea. I was just told to sit in the seat. So right. That's what I hear you saying. And again, I'm certainly not as deeply entrenched into the fundamentals as you two are, and you can hear it. I mean, you can hear the frustration. I heard it from Matt early on in our discussions about how the industry is structured, and it's not structured for profitability for all, right? It's structured for profitability for some. Yeah. And it seems like a terrible way to run a company. I mean, I can't imagine starting a company and going, hey, I'm going to pay you $2 and, all the profit goes to me. And, I really don't care whether you like that or not, or whether you're interested in my profit. Now, hey, help me get profits. It's like,
and it's been that way for a long time. And the thing is, one thing I won't impugn is the fact that a lot of these producers put a shit ton of money on the line, knowing full well that most of them are going to lose all of it. Like, yeah. Wicked happened once out of every 300 shows. Hamilton happens once out of every 1,000 shows. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't happen. Most of them end up seriously in the red and lose $10 to $15 million. So I understand. It's not me, the actor, is putting my own money on the line. They are. So they should get most of the profit. I understand that. But the business model moving forward, and I couldn't agree more with Val, and we've talked about this for years, those of us who have been sort of around this particular animal, for-profit theater, it's cutthroat. And the producers will step on another producer's head to make sure that their show succeeds, and sometimes to make sure the other shows don't succeed, because there's only so many shows. So moving forward, because everything is now shifted, I'm just very interested to see where the paradigm shifts now, because it has to move forward. And Val and I spoke about this a little bit, and again, I keep coming back to, why not us? Why not Valerie? Why not Dave? Why not Matt? Why why is the big idea not coming from one of us? It certainly can. And if I had to put money on it, I'd say it's coming from Val.
Val, are you there? Suddenly her internet cut out.
Valerie Lau-Kee Lai, I love you so much. This has been such a pleasure. And it's going to be one of the, I think you're going to be one of these people that we kind of check in with as we start to unravel what's going on here. And I've been telling you.
I appreciate everything that you do, because you start some really interesting conversations, and they're very thought provoking. So keep doing the good work.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, that is our show. So thank you for tuning in. Because we had some technical issues at the beginning, we're just going to fade to black. So somehow, Mr. Stokey, you're going to have to fade us out to black. So if you like what you hear today, subscribe, keep on listening, go out to social media. Also, don't forget about that discount code for Knowledge Perk Coffee.
Here, subscribe.
That day if you subscribe and post it on our Facebook group. Valerie, thank you so much. You were so great to talk to. Mr. Stokey, I think we're out.
Thank you, Val. Love you.
Thank you. Bye.